It's the penultimate round of the season, and as usual now we're starting with the lower divisions. It was a hairy but pretty clean opening to Division 3-1, and Belv converted pole into a tidy lead. There was some mishap as Lil Mac lost it at Prost Corner, and had similar trouble rejoining the course as Barbosa had at Sardina, only this time Lil Mac was on the receiving end. After one lap, Belv, Akai and Sursan were in a close grouping, then Barbosa and Infinite and Toxic fighting for 5th. A slightly better exit from Forest Point gave Akai a run on the inside going into Croissant, and he took the lead. Sursan misjudged the turn somewhat and dropped down to 5th. Trying to move back up, he tangled with Toxic at Prost Corner. Things seemed to be deteriorating for Belv, who was going off the course, knocking into the barriers, and so jeopardising his second position. Sure enough, Barbosa overtook, and was briefly leading the race when Akai took a pit stop on lap 6. After their own pit stops, they were still very close, and midway through lap 11, Belv made his move on the forward bridge, and held the inside around Sacre Bleu. Akai was leading the race, but only by a few seconds, and took a second stop. Neither Belv nor Barbosa had any need to stop again. This was their fight for victory. Belv made one or two more errors, enough for Barbosa to smell blood in the water, but something must have clicked, and for the last 3 laps of the race, Belv was going like the wind. Barbosa just couldn't find an answer to that kind of pace, and could only hope for the Russian to go off track again. But he didn't, taking the win, with Barbosa second and Akai a distant third. The driver called Scuderia joined the VLX team but couldn't make it to this one, so Felix was filling in and started off tremendously. Breaking away from the pack, Felix got perhaps a little overconfident and knocked into that barrier at a lacy corner, and Edward had him in no time. Felix was close enough to counter-attack, but couldn't pull it off. Playlister also saw his chance to pounce when Felix incurred a shortcut penalty. They went through the Schlesser S's as close as train carriages, and traded places here and there. Edward was some way ahead by now, but all it took was a bad line into Sacre Bleu for the other two to catch up. Suddenly, Edward was under heavy pressure, with the German breathing down his neck for the next half a lap. Eventually, the smell of sauerkraut got too much for him, and his defensive line around Forest Point was undone by Felix's superior exit speed. They were neck and neck through Verdun, with the left-handed kink advantaging Felix. Once again, the VLX driver commanded the lead. Some way behind, Playlister was having some trouble. He went off at Forest Point, letting Bizzle and VC Most get away from him, and went mowing the grass verge for quite some way before being able to return to the road. On the following lap he had a similar experience, but bouncing off the wall this time as Petrolhead got past. Felix made a very early pit stop, with a clear projection for an even 2-stopper. Edward was driving more conservatively and looked good for the more common 1-stop. And there behind him was Bizzle, who had simply kept his nose clean for long enough to inherit second place. He took an undercut pit stop on lap 8, and so naturally Felix overtook him. At the midpoint of the race, Edward also made his pit stop, and Felix took the lead again. Edward emerged only just ahead of Bizzle, very much within striking distance. As you might expect, Felix's next stop was on lap 12. Edward and Bizzle were still duelling, with Bizzle making quite a daring move to pass his opponent at Croissant. Unfortunately, he slipped up at Prost, only just saving himself from disaster. It was enough of a mistake for Edward to slip past him on the bridge. All this drama was giving Felix what he needed, enough time to catch up to them both. It was a 3-way battle for the lead, but only one of these guys had already proven to be championship material in eSGT, and that fellow was Felix. Bizzle tried to go for the lead, but Felix confounded them both by slipping up through the middle, taking the first part of Schlesser around the outside and getting around Edward in the most daring way. Bizzle had overexerted his car and needed to pit for more fuel, hoping to have a strong enough gap with VC Most. And so it was now just between Felix and Edward. Sure enough, Felix was the man for this race, and took the checkered flag, and Edward was a little way behind. Bizzle keep his position secure enough and finished third. Prozac on pole made a poor start compared to Gui, who took an early lead. Beatitis was third, giving his teammate Prozac a little comfort. In fact, Prozac then got a good exit from Forest Point and was able to overtake through Verdun, just as we saw with Felix. And then Gui had Beatitis to worry about, who in turn had Neutron to worry about. Beatitis got through but really fouled up at Sacre Bleu and found himself mired in the midfield. While Gui was also losing ground, Tokyo was putting on a spirited but somewhat chaotic performance and managed to snatch second for a while. Gui was in his wake, keen to recover from his earlier bad fortune. It looked like he had one up on Neutron for one fleeting moment, but it wasn't enough. Just off the bridge, Gui was the next driver to be caught off guard by Sacre Bleu, and Bruno caught him. While Bruno and Neutron were committing to a two-stop strategy, Gui had a chance to make amends. Beatitis was right behind him, constantly challenging for position, and both of them just behind Tokyo. The three of them politely filed into the pit lane together at the midpoint. Whichever of them was best at fuel management would emerge ahead of the other two. Once Neutron and Bruno, who you may recall had already stopped, had zipped past, it was Gui who emerged first, and not far behind Prozac, who was on the same kind of strategy. Beatitis and Tokyo came out at the same time, and they went neck and neck around Forest Point, Verdun, Croissant. They began trading places then, putting on a very good show. Bruno came in a little early to undercut against Neutron, who was leading the race now. Bruno's teammate Prozac was right on his tail, so keen to stay on him that he almost followed him into the pits. Once Neutron came out again, Bruno was only just able to catch him, locking up and almost losing it in order to overtake. Bruno took a clumsy line through Prost, and on the other side of the bridge, Neutron risked all to overtake there. It was very well executed though, and on slightly fresher tyres, the advantage was Neutron's. Gui had caught back up to Prozac, having worked very hard to make up for early misfortune. After about 3 laps of dogged pursuit, he over-egged it a little and was caught out at Prost like many other drivers. With only half a lap to go, he had gambled the race on a bold manoeuvre and it hadn't paid off. Still, as Prozac took the checkered flag, Gui was close behind and must have been glad of a very respectable second place. Beatitis, just a little way behind, won his team an additional place on the podium of Division 2. Coming into the penultimate round with a 2-point lead, Darkrai was joined on the front row by teammate Lamb, but with a superb start, coming in right between them was their third man on the grid, DJ. He got clean away from them. I don't know what the precise relationship is between the upper and lower Phoenix divisions, but this must have been a little awkward for DJ to say the least. They were managing to get past DJ just as Hueso and Nova were positioning themselves to strike, and DJ clumsily closed the door in such a way that Hueso fell back and with a shortcut penalty. DJ later made somewhat more of a nuisance of himself with Holman on his tail, though Holman got past him. Those two continued to duel, and quite a traffic jam was building up behind them. Dr. LJ, Fives, Hueso and Tusho were all chomping at the bit for a moment to break through, but for much of lap 2, DJ and Holman had been consistently neck and neck, until DJ got a bad exit from a Lacey, and was overtaken by both LJ and Fives. Hueso tried a wide line at Schlesser, but disaster! He smacked into the barrier and was stopped dead. Tusho shot past, but he was next for the chop. At Forest Point he was far too wide, skirted the gravel and went into a dramatic spin. Now, Hueso was working hard to redeem himself of his earlier mistake, and began making up places as drivers ahead made errors. What helped him enormously was a 3-way battle for 5th, just a little way ahead. It was quite a messy business, with Dr. LJ being knocked about a bit, going off the course and smacking the barrier. And this time it wasn't his fault. Well, mostly. The lead of the race was at present held by the Phoenix drivers Lamb and Darkrai. Whether they were duelling or cooperating is hard to tell, but Nova was on their trail. On lap 8, Darkrai car was behaving in a most unusual way, and that gave Nova a good opportunity to pass him. For a whole lap, this VLX on Phoenix sandwich went on its way, and then Darkrai and Nova entered the pits, while Lamb carried on. Darkrai emerged ahead of Nova by some way, and then behind those two it was Fives and Hueso. Fives held Hueso up until he scraped the wall around Croissant, setting himself up to be overtaken, not without trading paint, mind. He didn't give up though, and for lap after lap after lap, almost for half the race, the two of them were dancing around each other without a moment's relief. Fives would make an error, and Hueso would just get past in time to make his own mistake, and it went back and forth to the end. And in the end, it was Lamb who took the victory here, with Darkrai finishing second to develop a more comfortable position in the championship. Nova came third, and his teammate Hueso, still trying to shake off the unshakable Fives, was no doubt thankful to come in fourth. Anyway, fifth is the best place for Fives. With only one round to go, it is Darkrai's to lose. With a 6-point advantage, it is by no means certain that he will emerge as our next champion, but considering that Darkrai has been on podium every single time so far, Hueso is going to have to win the final round, and even then, it may come to a tie. Even with an absence and a DNF, Storm still leads Division 2 by a huge margin. Gui has cemented his position in that division quite nicely, and Tokyo has been showing good form lately. Excellent results from Scuderia, even accounting for Felix's support. It seems that he's quite secure at the top of Division 3, with Little Mac and Akai currently tied below him, and Infinite and VC Most have also tied below those two. It is really anyone's guess what the pecking order will be after the final round. Will Darkrai continue his streak of excellence to claim the title from Nova? Can Hueso pull a win out of the bag with Darkrai floundering? What will happen if they finish the championship in an exact tie? Well, I don't even know that myself. What I do know is that the final round takes place at the awesome, the dreadful, the wonderful and terrible Nürburgring 24-hour circuit. And it may or may not take place at night. Oh man. Stay safe everyone, and a happy Easter.